Hey, welcome back to our Ohio State University, University of Rio Grande live streaming radio and telecast podcasts. I'm Patrick Dangle, executive producer of Telecast programming.
And I'm Dwayne Rigsby. I'm the technical manager here, I guess.
We're both with the Ohio State University South Centers. We also have behind the scenes Mike Thompson, who is the Instructional Design and Media Services, as well as Kimberly Rausch, who's a programming assistant and producer of some of the programs that we have.
Right.
And Dwayne, we sort of collaborate with the University of Rio Grande and Rio Grande Community College. We've had a really strong working relationship with the different programs, and it's sort of unique in the fact that we have two really good universities, University of Rio Grande and Ohio State University, and what we do is we do various different telecasts.
Right. Yes.
And some of the telecasts are educational programs. Well, we're starting something unique today.
Something pretty new, huh? Yeah, you're right. We're starting a podcast that'll be broadcast both by video and by audio.
Yes.
So could be radio station
Yes.
as well.
Very, very true. And what we're going to do is we're going to take 4 past shows that we telecast on the radio and on different TV programs, etc., to sort of give a flavor of what we're doing. Dwayne, over 110,000 viewers from 178 different countries have touched at least one of our
Really?
educational programs.
Wow, that's pretty good.
And I'm very pleased that we have 13, 14, 15 different show formats, and we continue to expand on that. Through your technical expertise and Mike's involvement also, we now live stream. And live streaming really just came about in the last year.
Right.
So we like to think that we are technical innovators.
We try to be. Yeah, we try to get out there on that edge if possible. But there's a lot of things that keep us held back. But it's for a good thing. So.
Yeah. And in our particular programming, one of our major goals is to show some of those past interviews to help individuals who have never seen the programs before understand. And I think we have 4 shows really lined up. However, we recently had a HOPS conference at the Ohio State University South Centers.
Right.
And there we had the opportunity to talk with a number of different vendors. And one of the vendors was Wayne Law.
Yeah.
And he's with...
he was with the, the Northeast Post and Poll, I
that's
believe,
right.
company?
Yes. And he talked about hops in the agricultural setting. So why don't we visit with him for a minute and come right back.
All righty, will do.
We're here at the Ohio State University South Centers, specifically at the HOPS Conference and Trade Show. There are a number of vendors, interested farmers, growers, and special speakers. We have with us here Sam Evans. He's with the Miller Chemical and Fertilizer business, in which he's also going to be showing some of the different products to individuals in our conference. And so I welcome you, Sam.
Thank you.
So what capacity are you with at this conference?
We are here as a vendor for the conference. So the Miller Fertilizer and Chemical LLC has been in business for about 80 years, and we've worked with many types of crops, many types of all around the world, in fact. But we've been working with hops actually since probably back in the early 2000s, late 1900s in the Pacific Northwest. But now, as we get hops are generating again here in the Midwest and in the Northeast, of which I'm from, Central Pennsylvania. So,
very good.
And we have some hops in Pennsylvania and in New York. So, working with them, trying to help the growers with some nutritional things that they have, try to get the hops to, get that extra oomph, get them the best yield that it can, the best quality it can. So when these,
that is important.
so when these
That is
crafters
important.
make that their special brews, that
That's
it's
right.
very enjoyable.
That's right. You were talking a little bit, why growing hops is important to our area farmers, and not just Ohio, but, in the Northeast. So why is it important?
Well, it gives growers something. It gives someone who wants to grow a crop with small acreage the opportunity to do that, and also doing it into something that they have interest in. There's all
understand.
kind of different. We all do different jobs and we have different likes. And
Yeah.
hey, it gives you something you can get back and get into the earth, till the soil, grow your crop, take that from the hop plant right into the craft. So I think it's kind of a neat deal for these growers for some income as well as some enjoyment.
Okay. And, something I always like to mention, some words of wisdom. What are some things you'd like to tell the listening audience about your business, about hops growing, the conference?
I just think I think this is my second year coming to the Ohio State University's hop.
So, good.
Hop conference. Last year was in Worcester. We're here this year, and I just think it's a great learning experience to bring all the growers in together. Makes it real nice for us as vendors to come together. We can put everything together. The growers come, they learn from the university specialists. We learn from the university specialists. We as vendors learn from the growers as to what their needs are and the products that we are able to manufacture to put out into the field for them to use. That's why I think this is a great conference, so we can get everything all together, get out and it's kind of neat. It's the hops growers is like a fraternity basically, that everybody's striving for the same goal. Which is really really nice.
Well, I really appreciate your involvement with this, and I hope that in some of our subsequent programs we could have you back on and you can talk more about the importance of proper chemical fertilization.
Oh, that'd be perfect. That'd be great.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Sam, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm talking with Samuel Evans. He's with the Miller Chemical and Fertilizer LLC, and it's a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
That was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. It was. It's always interesting to learn about new technology in the age of agriculture, I guess.
Boy, that's very, very true. Dwayne, we have had a number of years in which we've been involved in developing show formats, and I think one of my favorites is Tech Talk.
It's one of my favorites too. Absolutely. So, Tech Talk it started out at the University of Rio Grande Community College, and what we did was there's a couple of guys over there that is technology savvy and actually very well, and they're both in different fields, I guess, if you would call it. Kingsley Meyer, he's the director of campus computing over there at Rio Grande Community College, and Mike Thompson, he's more in the instructional design, doing video, keeping the equipment going for classrooms and things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And he's the director there of that department, the computing and computing design.
And also we have a third, and I wonder who that might be.
I have no idea who
That's
that might be.
Dwayne Rigsby, our own Dwayne Rigsby, who's our technology specialist here at the Ohio State University South Centers. So what in this particular video, what did you talk about?
I think in this video that we're about to play, we talked about lithium batteries. You've heard about them exploding on planes and things like that.
Yeah.
And then we always cover security on a gamut of things, what came out recently to things that you should always just watch on a regular basis.
And I know that you get on me because all my passwords are
Our
password.
we always should remember to make sure you keep every password secret. So, and the other way that Patrick can do that is keep a password.
And then you're going to talk a little bit about tech news. So I think this is one of my favorite interviews.
Well, we'll play it here and enjoy.
and welcome everybody to the March edition of Tech Talk. And we just have a smattering of things to go over, I think, this month.
Variety.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff.
That's a tech term.
Yeah.
Yeah. New terminology.
Dictionary.com, smattering.
So, what's new in the world?
Well, I think we should always start with our updates and security problems.
Okay.
As usual, we never have no security problems. We always have them.
Well, and what's our problems that aren't necessarily the same as global problems or problems in Washington, because if you been following the news on that, you'd think everything was cybersecurity and who's checking out who. And in reality, I think there's a lot of that going on. The whole idea of cyber terrorism is definitely something that we've lived with for years and years. But today, I think we want to drop it down to our personal level. You know, what sort of affects us. And we were joking a second ago about how people spend most of their time. And today it seems to be the giant chicken.
The chicken, the kids behind you. Yeah, absolutely. Those YouTube videos are always hilarious.
Yeah.
Really, the things that still affect me, and I've been off Facebook now for a couple months, is just we talk about fake news, alternative reality, or facts.
Alternative facts, right?
Alternative facts, and I started to get onto the conspiracy bandwagon when I started to read about the companies that were involved in helping pollsters target the ads that were put into social media at the time of the last campaigns and the elections. And whether you call it artificial intelligence, or you look at where information can be used from census data, it's true. We know an awful lot about the people that live around us, their preferences, and if you know that they're on social media, you can shape the news they get.
Yeah.
And if it's true news and you're vetting the sources, or it's fake news.
Fake news, that's the word.
Well,
I think.
there's several different types of fake news. One of them started, I think, probably with like Fox News. And what they would do is so much of some of these channels, whether it's MSNBC or Fox or whoever,
Right.
is opinion.
Right. It's just your
So
opinion.
it's not the news report. It's only their opinion or the way they look at it. But then what they would do is say, this guy would say something, and then what he said was reported on their news segment.
Right.
Okay, so that's one sort of type of thing. So the other type of fake news is possibly like propaganda, in the way that there are companies that own outlets,
Yeah.
and networks, and so they have a opinion or an idea that they want to push. So things are written in a certain way, or stories are omitted. Or pushed for certain agendas.
Well,
And then there's
the
other-
algorithms that go into the science of where they gather their news and how they put it into the news channels is what concerns me, because it is not done necessarily with human interaction. Some of it is being done by computer
where
programs.
they put together your news feeds that come over the internet.
And you get something that's not necessarily from a reliable source, and it gets retweeted or
Right.
reposted. And whether there was a group of people that were putting up fake news sites that they would that they would create the domain, they would have writers that barely could do proper English writing fake stories, and then they get picked up and then they enter into the news cycle.
Right.
I'm glad that some of the schools are working with the children now and telling them just how to know what is truth and reality versus not. And,
Well, and another
hopefully it'll work
thing-
itself out.
Another thing that happens is people have bias, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they just want to confirm their biases.
Right.
So if you look at my YouTube feed, I watch certain things,
Right.
and so it'll give me more of that.
Right.
Where
Yeah, yeah.
somebody else is looking at something
They'll be
totally
watching
opposite,
some other channel or something.
and then that will boost their ideas,
Right.
you know, because of confirmation bias. And so that too further separates, you know, right, left, or whichever way you want to go, north, south.
Right, yeah, with those channels, like you said, and I think most of it is, has gotten so opinionated that's the problem.
And people don't know what the difference between opinion and news is.
Actual facts, yeah.
Right.
I think that's the whole thing, is we're getting those two mixed up, or we're relying on opinions much more than we are facts.
Right.
So,
I could take it back another level. I
Yeah.
think people need to be a little bit more responsible of knowing what they're reading, where it comes from,
Yep.
knowing how they're using their devices, and what happens to the things that they do on their device.
I get all my news from the Onion.
That's true. You mentioned an app that allows you to locate lost phones
Yep.
and to track younger people,
Yep.
people that are in your custody, so to speak,
Right, right.
parental custody, and knowing, you know, where they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite the same as downloading an app or having malware put a stalking app on your device.
Right. And
But-
want to enable that GPS location,
And,
and then
you know,
send you all the extra ads and everything as you drive
responsible,
by them or something.
creepy. You know,
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
There's
Yeah.
a line there, and you know the news story about Marines that had developed a website that had reposted pictures that many had come as a result of relationships, and then all of a sudden those get out in the wild and reposted.
Was that a message board sort of like 4chan? I can't remember what the name of it was, but
Well, you know, it just gets creepy when you start having revenge porn and people put up
Right.
pictures.
Right.
You know, it's not the Anthony Weeders sexting, but you know, you need to know where your pictures go. And if you're using a mobile device and taking
Right.
a picture,
Any of these.
some of the apps that we have automatically upload it, and you've got, you know, Snapchats and other things, but you don't necessarily know, unless you've become an expert on your phone and your apps,
Yeah.
where they're going.
Right.
And
Polaroids are still safer.
And,
yes, they are.
Polaroids are safer, but just like what you said, when you upload those photos, just think of all these sites now that have gotten hacked so many times. You don't know if your site was actually compromised, your password was compromised, if you put them into Google or if you put them into Facebook, any of these places that have photos. People can grab those, hackers, whatever, grab your photos and post them somewhere else.
And of course, you've
And-
read all of the agreements
Yeah.
and understand all the agreements.
Understand all of that, and basically, blah, blah, blah. They own all
Yada,
of your
yada, yada.
photos. They own
I read
everything
them to
that
the
you
word,
upload.
you know.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know anybody that reads end user license agreements.
Right.
Next.
Right.
Maybe if you're a lawyer. I don't know.
If you're paid to write them, you
Yeah,
read them.
Right.
exactly, yeah.
N-
You're paid direct.
No end user reads the license
No.
agreements.
Scroll down, agree.
Okay. From the
So-
help desk.
Help desk.
Okay.
From the help desk.
Let's go there.
I don't know about everybody else, but you know, we run a help desk here at the university, and any one of us have friends that will call and ask us about problems.
Yep.
And I got a letter from Carl H.
Okay.
And Carl was concerned about the latest updates and when things break, like your Outlook.
Outlook. Yeah, Outlook is becoming a problem for me right now. The last, apparently, an update came out in, obviously last week or in March. It will just not, Outlook will not open. And you uninstall the update, it works just fine until it downloads the update, and then it breaks it again. So we're trying to figure out what is going on there, and it looks like it's a version thing. So if you're running Outlook 2016 is the problem. I've got some on 2010 and stuff, and they're fine.
I might know Carl H. Does he have a computer newer than 2001?
And yes, he does, and he has one older than
And older.
Well, you know, in this particular case, we have 2016 on Windows 10, and it hasn't broken. But last October, when Microsoft's, and try not to mention too many names, but you know, when Microsoft released their update, we had about 70% of the computers in our institutions that were not on the official supported list.
Is
When-
that a hardware versus software problem?
Yeah, They decided that they were going to do an upgrade for Windows, and it was going to take advantage of something called a trusted protection module, so they could do cool security things on your computer. It's just they never checked the version on the computer before they pushed the upgrade. The upgrade broke Windows. And we started to see machines that went into a blue screen of death. And we had to stop it. We had to just push out a policy across the campus that said, pay no attention to the upgrades. You don't want them. They're broken.
Yeah.
In November, December, it was repaired because they learned of it. But what do you do? What do you do when you come in one morning and all of a sudden your users are dropping off and they can't get their mail or their machines are just blue?
Yeah, they just turn it on and it's a blue screen right away.
Carl H. had a problem with after the initial upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10, all of a sudden you would turn on the computer and the mouse would just lock up and freeze. And it went through several...
Could you do key commands?
No, just
No?
it basically went stupid. It just like
Locked up any inputs.
You couldn't
locked
control
up.
anything.
Couldn't control anything. And I believe his tech support person finally found that it was the initial calling home to the mothership when Windows starts.
Yeah.
OneDrive goes out and checks. Dropbox goes out and checks. Adobe goes out and says, hey, you got a new Flash.
Yeah.
Our friends at Oracle say, is there a new Java update? And during that time, it was so consuming that computer's cycle that it said, you know, don't let them type because we can't keep up. Don't let them change the mouse. And so after that all settled down, it worked.
Yeah.
But who knew?
Right.
Why is it that we get these systems and then they go and they say, yes, we're going to do your upgrade, we're going to do this. You know, here, have some free software, and then all of a sudden you get the whole accumulation of bloatware, and what you have is a brick instead of a device.
Agreed. It's and somewhere I think there's got to be a spot. Not that there ever will be. That a spot to where we, you know, like you said, Flash and Java and all of these things go out at one time and checks. Is there a way that we can delay that or turn it off and we can say when we want it to be updated?
Does when they do the updates, do they check on the machine's technical specs and go, well, you're not ready for that?
In the case of the anniversary update from last August 2016, no. Because obviously, blue screening, you know, 70% of an enterprise environment is not acceptable.
Right.
But by default, these things are going to go out and they're going to check in the middle of the night. But if your computer's not on in the middle of the night, you turn them on, you get a cup of coffee, and you got a scone, and all of a sudden, you can't use your machine for 10 minutes until it gets done with its housekeeping.
Right. Yep.
And, you know, it's job support.
And then, you know, when you do that, do you say, at this point, do you say, leave your machines on overnight? There's a lot of people that say, tell me, well, you know, I don't want the machine running overnight. You know, I want it shut down.
Yeah, it's
and
a
then they turn
green
it on.
thing.
Yeah, I understand it's a green thing, but then you also have to realize that, okay, be prepared to wait that 10 minutes, 15 minutes for everything to check in and be delayed. But yet I get questions, why is this thing so slow in the morning? Well, if you leave it on at night, do that. And then what I tell users is restart it at lunchtime to clear it out and give it a fresh, and that second half of the day makes that machine go much quicker. And then you don't have to worry about it.
So on one side, you have your default settings.
Yep.
Do upgrades at 3:30 in the morning. And the other one is, gee, I really don't trust these upgrades because it's probably going to brick my machine.
Might brick 'em, yeah.
So I want to approve it before it goes out and does it. Or download it but don't install it. And the average person has no clue.
Right.
You know,
I approve everything I do. It's like, you're not doing it until I tell you to.
no,
Right. You approve it, but like Kingsley was saying, you know, do you know if that update's actually going to brick your machine? That's going to take time to go out and do a little research, look at some blogs or some pages that say, oh, this is a bad update. This is what's happened because I've updated.
So wait
I
a
try
couple
and-
days.
Yeah, wait a couple of days. That's what I tend to
See
do.
what your neighbor.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Yeah,
didn't work.
I tend to not. I hold my updates off until 2 or 3 days and then do an update.
Right.
Just because, oh, I'm hearing in the wild that all of a sudden that's a bad update. Well, good thing I didn't update yet. So
Officially, the way they do it is they have the alpha group that goes
Right.
out there. You're willing to trash your machine because you've agreed to be at that cutting edge of
Right.
releases. Then there's the betas, which is a little wider group of people, and then they subject the home user to it. The last group they send out updates to are the enterprise customers.
Yep.
And in our case, we're an enterprise customer, but we haven't controlled that management side of it. We're basically allowing it to happen, but we're the last of the group. And true larger enterprises, they are going to stop it, and you have a testing group that goes out and checks it out before it is released to your enterprise.
right.
And that takes staffing. It takes staffing
It
and
takes staffing,
expertise, and it takes
time,
a
a lot of
lot
it.
of time to go out and do that. And good luck to all those people that are out there, because that's the direction it's all
Yeah.
going to be heading.
And you have to have the hardware and the software that you're having on your machines, because a lot of that times that stuff conflicts with the update. Maybe like you said, my Outlook problem is a problem, but you don't seem to have it. Well, maybe there's something hardware. Maybe I've got a different driver, something on my hardware machine that you don't. Maybe because yours is a different machine. Maybe. Who knows? What is causing that? Maybe there's another piece of software.
Our friends at the
that's
state of
conflicting.
Ohio had software that was used by our Crossroads program. I'm not sure if it was Jobs and Family Services, but it's one of those agencies. And it was stuck at a certain revision, certain version.
Hey, that's really good information. I know that we're going to see additional information, but unfortunately, we have to take a station break and be right back.
Yep, we'll be right back after 15 seconds.
Our sponsors have been very, very good to us in being able to jointly work together, and it allows us to present Tech Talk and other particular shows. Let's see, we have Kingsley Meyer.
Right.
He's the director of the Campus Computing Network, and Mike Thompson, who's with the Instructional Design and Media Services, and of course, our own and our beloved Dwayne Rigsby, which you're talking about different kinds of security issues, different tech news, things of that nature. So let's go back to the next part of your
And
video.
our machines update, they move on. It wouldn't run. It wouldn't run. Found out it was the Google toolbar,
Oh, yeah.
which a lot of people put the Google toolbar, or it's highly suggested when you do an update or you get Flash. Would you like this? Would you like that? And if you don't uncheck the boxes, you get it. Well, who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew? That's not irresponsible of the Google folks for doing it, but it caused problems down the road, because it is a wide range of interoperating software and hardware
Right.
providers in order to give us this environment. It's still kind of cool.
Yeah.
I got another letter that came in.
Okay.
This was from Pat M., who asks, my husband keeps putting things in our house that operate off this Internet of Things. He calls it IOT.
Okay.
And, I'm a little bit fearful of having motion controls, not because of the creepy stalking factor, but all of this wireless stuff going around the house.
Right.
Should I be concerned?
Should you?
About
Things
all
stalking
the
you in your house.
frequencies or the information it's gathering?
Yes and yes.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, that's a two-edged
I mean,
sword, if you would.
obviously, her husband wants to have some home security.
Home security,
And,
yeah.
and we don't have home security systems that use wires much anymore. Almost all of them. I think just every provider has wireless stuff. So do you say, I don't want home security because you're afraid of the fact that these run on wireless communications?
Best thing you can do is lock your doors. Number
Your
one.
doors. But it's
Make
true.
sure your windows are locked.
Yeah.
And you never leave
But-
home.
And then, with
Never leave home, or when you do, you don't know if somebody did.
I saw
Crack a
a
window.
thing about the cameras and the security, the keypads.
Keypads. Like garage keypads or something?
Right.
I mean, those have been out for a long time.
The burglar,
Sure.
they talked to a burglar and he said, okay, I can do the thing and break in the house, the alarm goes off. I know I have 4 or 5 minutes
Right.
and then I want to be gone. So I just have a specific amount of time. If I see a camera, I'm pulling the cables out or spray painting the lens. Or I'm just going to wear something that you
Right.
can't see.
Can't tell.
And now it's defeated.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always ways of defeating everything, seems like. It's just that you try to do your due diligence
Right.
to protect what you have. And,
And that's another thing.
that's like parking your car and just leaving the windows down and with the key in.
Right. That's another thing he said is like, if he goes up to a house and they've got cameras and everything, well,
Chances are
that's
he's gonna
telling
walk
me that there's a lot in there that this person's trying to protect.
Could be.
It's a flag.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what all the meth cookers have on their homes because they have a lot to protect.
A lot of protection, yeah.
On this particular one, I think Pat's tech, and security supporter said, it's kind of hard to argue against, wireless security.
Right.
If you have an Android tablet or you have a Kindle, or you're looking at having a cell phone, because the reality today is that we have a lot of radio waves, and if you're afraid of radio waves,
You're in trouble.
probably you need to move to West Virginia where the Green Bank telescopes are, because they don't allow radio waves.
Yeah.
But it's just the way it is. We have two-way radios for police and fire protection. We have cellular communication for our use. It's illogical to be fearful of home security and not worry about your Sirius satellite radio or your dish network.
Right, because you're receiving waves. Yeah,
No, I
absolutely.
think, yes, we talk about not putting phones in our pants and having them there, or always having our phone next to our ear. I'm not sure what the latest research is on that. But
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's just coming around because it's just been enough time that this stuff can possibly affect someone.
I don't want to be at eye level to a cell phone tower on the next building. If I lived in an urban area and I was at the building that's a little bit lower than the other one, and my floor looks out on some of those big sector antennas, I'm not so sure I want to be there. Because
Maybe not.
that's close range bombardment.
Yeah.
But the average things, I think the FCC and other testing labs have vetted them for safety.
Right.
You guys read any good books?
No,
Don't have time.
unfortunately not. Yeah. About the only thing I can try to read is troubleshooting.
Yeah, how to do
How to
stuff.
fix this problem? How to fix that problem?
Tech support stuff.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to talk about was lithium battery safety. These are the
that is
things
in the
where
news, yeah.
your phones are like exploding. and
Hoverboards.
Your headphones may like.
Yeah.
Psh,
What about the one that was in the news
Hoverboards.
where the lady had the battery,
Earbuds?
something blew up on her head? Wasn't it?
Hearing aid?
No, it was
exciting.
headphones or something.
Yeah.
Or, I don't remember what it was. Yeah.
well, there's
yeah.
some safety things that you should look out for. Okay.
Don't leave
When-
them plugged in all the time.
Yeah. Like with my drone, it has lithium-ion batteries. They say do not have it on a full charge and store it.
And store it.
Don't store these things on a full charge.
Okay.
They have, bring them down halfway and then store it because it will build up gas and expand. And where you run into trouble is
I did not know that.
I didn't know. I'm not a battery person by any means.
you got, a chemical and a dielectric. A
Chemical
chemical,
and
and
yeah.
it's little things that separate these reactive things.
Right.
Now the trouble is when these reactive things come together,
Get smooshed. Yeah.
right, and it rubs through the dielectric or it overheats, and it shorts through it. that's when the thing will
They explode.
burst into flames.
And,
So
and that's what happened with the phone, right?
Right,
They,
so-
they got too tight.
it's either overheating, probably, and then that dielectric breaks down, or you can, sit on it or crush it in a way,
Yeah.
or
Right.
and then
Now, yeah, you notice.
and there's not a
and-
lot of
and-
space in these things, and you've got other, you know,
So we've seen hoverboards and laptops on
yeah.
on the videos. Laptop batteries don't flex much.
No.
And
well, and then there's the thing of cheap stuff.
okay, replacements. Buy from a
Well,
good vendor.
you bought this, what should be a $150 hoverboard for $50. It's a cheap Chinese knockoff.
There's your sign.
There's a
And
chance
they
there's a
put
problem
the
with
cheapest battery in it. Well, and the dielectrics aren't up to snuff.
Okay.
And there you go.
Are they governed by UL or any type of testing? Are we
I'm
moving
not
in that
sure
direction?
if
Boy,
everything is.
I don't think so. I think there's a
Certified,
lot
verified,
of them.
manufacturing standards.
I think there's a lot of
ISO
stuff out there
quality?
that's not.
All right.
And I think that's why we see.
And don't buy the cheapest thing to charge your phone or other devices with lithium-ion batteries.
I know when my device is down all the way and I plug it in and I've got a 3-amp charger instead of the 1 amp, it charges it real quick, but boy, does it get toasty.
Yeah, it gets
Yeah.
warm real quick. Yeah.
Is that dangerous? I mean,
I would
It's
say so. Yeah.
It's pushing it.
Yeah. At some point
But,
in time, it's going to go. Whoop.
Like with my,
not
if
be the
I'm
first time
charging
or
my
the
drone
second time.
batteries,
Yeah.
I don't leave the house with it plugged in. I
bad
put
on-
it
Yep.
I put it on a rock type of surface, by the fireplace, so that if it does flare up, it's not burning anything. Not like if I put it in the kitchen and poof goes everything
I'm
else.
going to start a home improvement company of putting chargers with a vent, like chemical department hoods.
There you go. Interesting.
So
Good
that's a
show
few
tonight.
tips for you.
Good show.
Okay.
Good deal.
So we will see you next time in April, which is not too long.
Keep those letters coming in.
Yeah.
We like to address your problems.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back.
Again, I thank all of our sponsors for our program. Dwayne, I'm just curious, for those that are not technically savvy, where should we go on the internet for understanding better?
Patrick, there's a variety of places to go to, and I'm not going to recommend just one location. You should always search out multiples and then compile those together and come up with your best judgment. And that's what I do. And you try to go to places that's reputable, go to a Microsoft site and things like that. So, yeah, you should always search out multiples. You should never believe just one.
Oh, okay. I think that's sound advice. Dwayne, in our telecasts, again, this is a radio and live streaming telecast, podcast, in which we are showing on our program several different telecasts that we've done in the past.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is we're trying to select those videos that mean something to many different individuals.
Right. I think those are the ones that we're playing kind of stand out and have some unique information about them and things. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found is in many, many communities, it's just not in southern Ohio or it's just not in Texas or wherever, but in many communities, we have a severe opiate problem.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we have had...
We do. Lots of places do.
Yes, yes. And many times we are dependent upon those that are willing to assist. If all of a sudden we become addicted, there are those professionals that can assist. Getting off of substance abuse is difficult. And so in our upcoming interview, we have with us Tricia Gibson and Sherry Russell, who's going to be talking about recovering and helping those addicts recover their
Recover
addiction.
from an,
Yeah.
well, or it could be applied to just about any abuse of
Yes.
any sort, right?
Yes.
So, all righty.
So here's Tricia and Sherry.
Hi, and welcome to our very first episode of Choosing Recovery. Last month, Sherry, Mike, and I all sat down and had a conversation about addiction in our area and just discussed briefly the scope of the problem. So I'm really excited that Sherry has asked me to come back, and we're going to co-host this show together.
We are.
And just really go in depth with what the problem is, how can we reach out to people struggling with addiction, and just discuss some community resources. Each month we're going to have special guests on the show, so I'm really excited to see what all's in store.
Yeah, and we were very excited about this. As Tricia mentioned, when we did the last show, we after it was done taping, we talked about we could do this every show. There's so much information. The community has so many questions. Everyone is touched by this in some way or another, whether it be a family member, a friend, someone. Everyone's wanting to know what resources are available, and we want to explore this on all ends. We want to look at it from the view of the person that is addicted, from the view of treatment options available, from the community health resources, from law enforcement, judicially. There's just so many options. It's endless what we can talk about.
Yeah, it's really a multidimensional problem, so I hope that this show will serve from an educational standpoint. Just let's help empower and educate the public on reaching out to people struggling with addiction. So I think it'll be a really good opportunity.
I think so as well. And I think today we have a really good guest to get things rolling.
Yes, we do. We actually have Angela Stowers here with us. She's the Deputy Director for the Gaia Jackson Meigs Board of Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services. So thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it. I know we had a little bit of short notice due to unforeseen circumstances for today. So thank you again and welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell me, Angie, as Deputy Director of this board, what's the function of the board?
The local board is really an extension. It's a form of local government. It's really an extension of the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. So we kind of manage things from the local level. So we're looking at partnering with our treatment providers, our educational systems, other human services, elected officials, faith-based organizations, et cetera, to make sure that we have the needed services in place in our counties to address mental health and addiction needs.
Okay. You mentioned needed services in the area. What are some of the needed services that we're seeing in the Gaia Jackson Meigs area?
Well, needed services, there's been such a stark increase in addiction and mental health services all around. There's so many coexisting disorders, which means someone suffers from both a mental illness and addiction. Our jails are currently being filled, unfortunately, with people who are suffering from an illness and unfortunately have potentially committed criminal acts because of that illness. So the needs are great. Treatment facilities are full. We have people on waiting lists trying to get into treatment, especially residential. It's a great need.
Okay.
It is. I think we're seeing a lot of, on the mental health side of things, we're seeing a lot of dual diagnosis, which is, as you mentioned, people will have a coexisting condition such as, depression, anxiety, bipolar, whatever, and they start self-medicating.
Absolutely.
And it goes from there. It snowballs. Before they know it, they're addicted. You can't hold a job when you're dealing with this the majority of the time. We've seen a huge rise in crime, in thefts. This is a very expensive habit for people to maintain. I know I've talked to patients before, and they're telling me they're spending a couple $100s a day on heroin. The money's got to come from somewhere for them, unfortunately.
Yes.
And I think the community as a whole is on the end of, on that end of it, the community is very sick of that. It's and then it's a vicious cycle. It comes back to what the community can do to address it, because everybody wants I think initially wanted to treat it with, it's not my problem, take care of those people, but now it's everyone's problem.
Absolutely.
And it's going to take everyone to fix it.
Yes.
So from a community standpoint, I know stigma and judgment is a big factor in addiction, and sometimes we find it's a barrier to obtaining treatment for people struggling with addiction. What can we do to educate the public on what it's really like?
Absolutely. I think as much as the people who are aware of what really drives addiction they need to get out there and share that message, and that is that it is an illness. It is a brain disease. It's now going to be considered a medical disorder rather than a mental health. It's really driven physiologically, especially with the opiates. People get very frustrated for the reasons that Sherry mentioned. It's affecting all of us with crime, and our properties are being stolen and damaged, and it's all a result of this issue. And I think those people have a little less compassion because they've been victims of that themselves, but the understanding has to be there that it is indeed a disease. Many of the clients that are treated in our facilities have developed this disease as a result of a legitimate prescription. Then there's a number of clients that are in for an opiate addiction at this point that started with an injury. Their physician prescribed them medication. They took it as prescribed, but it has such an impact on our brains when we take those substances that eventually it is not within their control. And I think people just have a hard time understanding that when they've never experienced it personally.
And I think what it comes down to from the medical perspective is people look at it, and to be honest, I kind of look at it this way too. That first choice to put a needle in your arm or to snort heroin, that's a choice. We need to educate people as to not make that choice. And I understand the disease, the disease process and that model with that as well. But and it's the same thing, medically when you're looking at it, is say everyone in your family has died of lung cancer. Don't start smoking.
Absolutely.
There's addiction issues that run in your family. Don't start taking these things. But then again, you've got a very legitimate point with, people are given prescriptions for opioids, whether they've had a surgery, whether they've had anything like that, and then they become addicted. We deal with it every single day. So it's a very fine line there. There are a lot of legislature changes that have came down the pike recently that have changed prescription practices for providers. Unless you have a severe chronic pain issue, you're not going to get more than 2 weeks of an opioid pain medication at a time. And it's very cut and dried as to what they can do and what they can't. I was told there's something coming through that if a provider has more than, I think it's 40 or 50% of their practices on opioid pain medicine, that provider's going to start getting fined. So there's incentives on that end to address it. But it's going to take the whole picture to do
So
it.
how can we account for the choice factor when, not everyone that starts using has done so because they've been prescribed it as a result of an accident?
Right. I think what Sherry alluded to, and that's prevention efforts, prevention and education, getting the message out there of what the results will be if you do make that choice and where someone might end up. We have provided a number of treatment resources. We have a number of people in treatment, and we are seeing greater success rates with that. But the ultimate goal is let's not get people to where they need that in the first place. So really increasing prevention efforts, making sure that the community comes together and provides that outreach and education and helps to make people aware that they should be even questioning prescriptions that they are given by their physician and making sure that they're
Absolutely.
not, making poor choices.
Because there are people that are free with their prescription pad, and that needs to be. And I think there are things coming down the road that are going to help address that as well.
Right, right.
So, in like clinical experience, and again, not getting too specific, what's some reasons why people have chosen to begin using? Is it psychological pain, trauma, social factors?
I think everyone's journey is very individualized, but as Sherry mentioned earlier as well, mental illness, depression, anxiety, trauma, there's a huge association with previous trauma and addiction. People have suffered these things and begin to just try to feel better and self-medicate, as we call it, and it just gets out of hand, and they're not getting, perhaps because they've chosen not to, because we do have resources available, but they haven't accessed them for whatever barrier or reason. They haven't chosen to treat the mental illness in a way that would be more effective, and it's caused them to have another illness on top of it.
So what I'm hearing you say is a lot of times addiction and mental health go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
You can't treat one and not the other in a way.
Oh, absolutely. If there's a coexisting disorder, both have to be addressed.
And I think that is one nice thing, working with the county jails and the judicial system and law enforcement. It's going to make their job easier in the long run, offering these services through the jails, treating these illnesses, getting these people the help they need to hopefully give them the choices they need to make the right treatment options to prevent from putting themselves in that position again.
Absolutely. I would also just add to that, we are able to provide those services locally in our jails due to grant funding and monies that have become available on a short-term basis in some cases. When someone is incarcerated, and even if they qualify for a medical card, they do lose that when they're incarcerated. So it really limits what our treatment providers can do to help them in that situation. And many times someone doesn't feel motivated to obtain treatment until they face that criminal charge and are in that situation. So the community having that awareness and knowledge and petitioning your legislators and people that can make these decisions about funding is would be a huge step in the right direction too, for making sure we can maintain that or sustain it in the long run.
And for a lot of people, I think sometimes being in jail is the first chance they've had to be clean. Although it's not by choice. They're going to get clean one way or another while they're there. So that's the perfect time to target these people and say, hey, we realize there is another issue going on here. Are you interested in treatment? Do you want to try to help yourself? And then it may be the first time that fog is lifted enough from addiction that they can make that choice.
Exactly.
So the title of the show is Choosing Recovery. What's it take for individuals struggling with addiction to choose recovery?
It takes a lot of support, I think. It takes a lot of courage. I mean, people who are, especially those who are addicted to opiates, the withdrawal that a person experiences when they are trying to stop is severe. With opiates, there's not necessarily a risk of them actually dying as a result of withdrawal, where there are with other substances like alcohol and benzos. But there's still, the symptoms of withdrawal are extreme. There's such a psychological dependence as well, and it all gets tied together. The physical, I've heard it described as the worst flu you've ever had times 10. People really struggle with a lot of body aches, pains, physical illness. And then again, it goes back to that psychological. There's almost a pattern behavior to their addiction at times. If somebody was used to waking up every morning at 5 a.m. and getting high at that time, they've got to find a replacement behavior for 5 a.m. because psychologically that's what they've done, that's what they've known, and it's part of their pattern and their routine. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into recovery, and that's tough for people. And many times people are part of generational addiction. They don't have sober supports within their household. A lot of times it takes cutting ties with everybody that they've known as family and friends to get themselves surrounded by people that are going to be supportive, and that's huge. It's very difficult.
We talked in the last show about rock bottom, and that's a common term, in addiction conversations. What is rock bottom, and how it's different for everybody? But what would it take for that person to finally say, okay, I've had enough, or I need to make a change?
Yeah, well, like you said, it's different for everyone. I don't have the answer to that question. My rock bottom would be much different from yours,
Yeah.
as it would be from anyone else's.
Yeah.
For some people, it doesn't take as much as it does for others. I really think, and we talk at the board very often about developmental assets and risk and protective factors, and that's kind of an approach that prevention uses. But in my mind, I think about people who are better able to enter into treatment and recovery having a higher level of those protective assets. They've got more involvement. Maybe they have a job. Maybe they have somebody else in the community that they're tied with. Maybe they have a faith base, to their existence. Whereas someone who struggles more greatly may not have as many of those protective factors. So it's very individual. I wish I knew the answer. Yeah.
And I think that's a sad thing too, is because we see multi-generations at this point of families being addicted. You see, I've personally have in the office have seen grandparents, parents, and now you're looking at teenagers that are having addiction issues. And you really, you feel bad for that child coming up in this environment because that's all they know.
Exactly.
That's all they've seen. It's nothing for the whole family to sit around and smoke a joint or shoot up or whatever they're doing, and the parents don't realize, I'm sure they realize, but it's like, it's no big deal almost. And it's the same thing you see a lot with a lot of the, like for example, hepatitis C is rampant right now as a result of everyone shooting up in the heroin. And people are almost, I actually had to tell a kid here a couple years ago that he was hep C positive. He was 18 years old. And he was like, everybody I know's got it, what's the big deal? And, trying to make them comprehend, we're going to face an entire health crisis with that down the road, because the population that have, that are developing this at this time, it's going to be an issue down the road. They may not feel bad and be sick right now, but eventually they will, and it's going to be it's going to be significant.
With it being a public health issue, are local health departments becoming?
Back, I'm learning a lot,
Yes.
and I'm just curious. When we come back with a word from our sponsor, I have a quick question for you.
All righty.
Hey, welcome back. We're talking with Dwayne Rigsby and Patrick Daigle, in which we're showing a number of different unique interviews that we have had on our OSU RIO live streaming program. Dwayne, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Why is it important that we have sponsors, or the need to stop our programs for the words from our sponsors?
Well, we always need to take advantage of people that will support us, and also get their word out as well, that they're supporting education and things like that ultimately support the community.
And that is very, very true. Hey, we're talking with Sherry Russell, Tricia Gibson. They are discussing a major problem with the need for help with addiction. And so let's go back to their interview.
Supportive, and that's huge. It's very difficult.
We talked in the last show about rock bottom, and that's a common term, in addiction conversations. What is rock bottom, and how it's different for everybody? But
Yes.
what would it take for that person to finally say, okay, I've had enough, or I need to make a change?
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's different for everyone. I don't have the answer to that question. My rock bottom would be much different from yours,
Yeah.
as it would be from anyone else's.
Yeah.
For some people, it doesn't take as much as it does for others. I really think, and we talk at the board very often about developmental assets and risk and protective factors, and that's kind of an approach that prevention uses. But in my mind, I think about people who are better able to enter into treatment and recovery having a higher level of those protective assets. They've got more involvement. Maybe they have a job. Maybe they have somebody else in the community that they're tied with. Maybe they have a faith base, to their existence. Whereas someone who struggles more greatly may not have as many of those protective factors. So it's very individual. I wish I knew the answer. Yeah.
And I think that's a sad thing too, is because we see multi-generations at this point of families being addicted. You see, I've personally have in the office have seen grandparents, parents, and now you're looking at teenagers that are having addiction issues. And you really, you feel bad for that child coming up in this environment because that's all they know. That's all they've seen. It's nothing for the whole family to sit around and smoke a joint or shoot up or whatever they're doing, and the parents don't realize, I'm sure they realize, but it's like, it's no big deal almost. And it's the same thing you see a lot with a lot of the, like for example, hepatitis C is rampant right now as a result of everyone shooting up in the heroin. And people are almost, I actually had to tell a kid here a couple years ago that he was hep C positive. He was 18 years old. And he was like, everybody I know's got it, what's the big deal? And, trying to make them comprehend, we're going to face an entire health crisis with that down the road, because the population that have, that are developing this at this time, it's going to be an issue down the road. They may not feel bad and be sick right now, but eventually they will, and it's going to be significant.
With it being a public health issue, are local health departments becoming involved in addiction treatment in any way?
Absolutely. The local health departments are trying to reach out, provide some education. I can speak specifically to Gallia County. They have a very active program, syringe exchange program, and they are involved in Project Dawn, which is the naloxone kits to help reverse an overdose. The syringe exchange, I think at last count they had served about 150 people on a regular basis. So that's a weekly count of people who are actively going in to exchange their needles here in Gallia County alone.
So they're taking their used ones, getting new ones to the health department?
Correct. And there's a lot of controversy around that, but just as Sherry was sharing, the health consequences and the crisis we're going to face there, the amount of money it costs to treat one person who is hep C positive is enormous.
I believe, I worked with the VA system, and when we would treat a veteran, I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe it was somewhere around the $60,000 to $70,000 range for treatment.
Right.
And that's significant when you times it by the amount of people that were seen positive at this point in time. And I've actually had people come back after they do the treatment and retest positive because they went out on the street and started using again, and thought that meant they couldn't get it again, but they can.
Absolutely.
And then they were upset because they weren't retreated again right at that point.
Yeah.
So naloxone kits, that's Narcan,
Correct.
and that's also controversial. I know people in the public feel as though that's creating a dependency, that's enabling users to continue use, or saying that it's okay. What's an alternative view of that?
Well, it's saving lives, and we look at someone that you care about most deeply, your child, your brother, your sister. If they're laying there and need that medication to bring them back just one more time, you are going to want that to happen. I'm going to just use a reference that our executive director, Robin Harris, uses in an example, and it's a fabulous one. We are also in a health crisis when it comes to obesity and diabetes and these kind of things, heart attacks, heart disease. So she even said this recently in some presentation she was giving. If we're standing over someone who's overweight and we know just ate another cheeseburger and a candy bar and they're having a heart attack, are we going to look at them and say, oh, sorry, no CPR for you because you knew better. You shouldn't have eaten that cheeseburger.
And that's a great point.
Yeah, I think that's a great
Yes.
example and demonstration of how we have to view this as an illness and really try to bring people back. I mean, how many people do we know that have had multiple heart attacks or diabetes or strokes because of their poor health choices? And what's the difference?
And one thing I know I'd seen somewhere, and I don't remember where it was at, but there was a community that was looking at charging people with some sort of, I don't know if it was, I'm sure it was a misdemeanor. If first responders, law enforcement, EMS had to show up and use Narcan on them, that they would in fact be charged with some type of crime for their use. I would tend to support that more than saying we can't give it to you. And I understand the people are frustrated and it's expensive, and you have people that can't get the medications for diabetes and things like that that they need. But also, again, I think we talked about this on last show too. If it was my child laying there or my grandchild laying there, absolutely, you want everything done. But I think there does need to be some consequences. I don't know what that would be, and I don't know how that would happen. But I think there needs to be.
What are we
something.
seeing from the state level? Is legislation coming down the pike that it would be a criminal offense if you use Narcan?
I am not as up to date on that as I ought to be,
Okay.
and I'm not sure. As far as I know, there's nothing on my immediate radar that's saying that's going to happen in our area. I know there are some bills and laws coming down in West Virginia where they're trying to push that through. Like I said, nothing on our immediate radar. I personally would support it. I feel like, again, many of our people who enter into treatment are motivated by justice in criminal charges, so they don't feel that need to really to make a change until they've had that type of consequence and have had that opportunity potentially to sit there and be clean for a few days and experience it. So I would like to see us put some more supports around that kind of thing so that we could get people into treatment. We're looking at trying to develop a peer recovery support network. I think there's a role for people who would fall into that category, and that's part of the continuum of care. That's a treatment avenue in a sense, where someone who has suffered addiction and is in recovery has been able to go through some training, get some certification, and be available to be almost a recovery mentor or a recovery coach. And I would love to see us be able to put those resources in place for someone who's been delivered Narcan to say, hey, now's the time, let's get you in there.
Well, and I think that's the thing too, and I think the people I think that have went through this themselves personally and have personal knowledge and experience of being an addict make the best counselors.
Absolutely.
Because we can sit there and talk to somebody until we're blue in the face, but we've not lived what they've lived. If you have someone that has the same experience that they have, I think they're more likely to listen to them, that says, hey, I was there, I know what you're talking about. I think one option that I really 100% back is Vivitrol, and we do that. Some in the community, there's different places that does do that. It's a great option, and it is an opioid antagonist, and what it does is it blocks those receptor sites for opioids, so when someone uses, they can't get high, essentially, is what it does.
Right.
But there's a lot of, and I think what I tend to have seen in practice is that people that truly want to stop using are 100% behind Vivitrol.
Right.
People that don't want to quit, you hear that, well, what if I'm in a wreck and I need pain medicine? And there's, so there's always a reason not to use it, but, and there are ways around that. But Vivitrol is an excellent option. I do believe that medical cards are paying for that, I believe.
Yes.
So if someone has CareSource, Medicaid, whatever, it does help take care of that. But it's a good option. And usually what I have seen in practice and by talking to people that are on Vivitrol is they may use it and then for whatever reason, I'm going to see if I can get high. And they try, and then they get mad because they've wasted their money because they can't get high. Although you do want to caution people that there is always that option that if they're using huge quantities, they could overdose, or if they go off of it, and it's a shot that you have to do once a month. And that's the thing, is if they don't maintain that, then they if they go more than a month without having their shot and they start using again, there's a high rate of overdose simply because their tolerance is down. And I think you see that a lot anyway of people coming out of recovery that relapse. That's the period you see a lot of overdoses because their tolerance is down, and they go back to using what they were using before, and then they overdose. But it's a great option.
So what's some resources in the community if someone's interested in Vivitrol injections?
We have a number of providers that are offering that service. We refer to it as medication-assisted treatment. So there is Vivitrol. There are other medications that can be used as well. But Health Recovery Services, Ohio Valley Physicians, Dr. Landry's practice, there are several that are offering that service. The best thing that someone could do potentially if they were seeking out a service would be to call us at the board, and we could link them with services that offer what they're looking for.
So even someone just generally struggling with addiction that doesn't know what they need, you would be able to kind of link them with services.
Absolutely, that's our role. Get them where
Wonderful.
they need to go and link them. And what we do, we have a list of our local providers in all 3 counties. We provide them with that, give them the information on what resources are available at each location and provider, and you know, we send them out, and not on their own necessarily. There are many times that we make calls for them and with them to make sure that they get there, because that's tough. And there's so much of the time we have people that'll say, well, here's your list, call these people. Well, they're already having a hard enough time even making that initial call
I'm
to
sure
us.
it's a very overwhelming process for
So
people.
we would want to work very hard to link them.
Where would people be able to get a hold of you at? How's the best way to contact you
Sure.
at the board, or call the board?
Yeah. The number at the board is 740-446-3022. And all of our staff there are very able to take calls and get people linked up with where they need to be.
So I really wanted to take this opportunity to talk more about what the community can do to reach out to people struggling with addiction. What can families do?
Families of addicts or
Yes.
family, yeah.
So I've talked to a lot of parents, mothers, you know, they just don't know what to do.
Well, again, just educating themselves, trying to learn about codependency and enabling, because that's huge in families
Yes.
with addiction. There are resources, again, available in R&On. There are some treatment providers that have groups and services specifically for the family members of addicts that will help them to learn about that stuff and change their behavior to help the addict recover. So there are things
Can
out
these
there.
people call the board too for available resources?
Absolutely. And all of our counties have local coalitions working right now. So Gallia, Jackson, Meigs, all 3 have coalitions in place where people are coming together to try to address the
And anybody
issue.
can join those coalitions?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Is there any activities coming up people can get involved in?
We actually in Gallia County have a dodgeball tournament this Saturday that's meant as an alternative drug-free activity and a fundraiser for that coalition. It's at Gallia Academy Middle School, registration at 9 o'clock on Saturday.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you coming in to talk with us today, Angie. It's been a pleasure.
I'm glad to have been here.
very
Thank you.
much. You're a great resource.
Yes.
Hey, great information. You know, Dwayne, as I was sitting here, the listening audience and the viewing audience has a variety of different ways that they can reach us. And
Yep, that's right. You can find us on YouTube at the OSU South Centers. And I've got to turn down a little bit of microphone here, so
Okay.
go ahead and tell us the rest of it, Patrick.
well, first of all, on Wednesday afternoons, we are on Channel 17, an educational program on Time Warner.
On Time Warner. Yep.
That's Channel 17.
Or in the new Spectrum, I guess.
Yes, yes. And it covers a number of different counties. We live stream them.
Uh-huh.
We do YouTubes. And we also, on occasion, do radio. With the Ohio State University, we are usually here in the mornings on Thursdays, in which we have a variety of different shows. We also are doing our radio telecast podcast programs.
Trying
in
to
which-
combine it all together.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so individuals can find us at youtube.com
/South Centers.
or by going to Rio Grande Cable Access on your YouTube, you can also find that. So there's a variety of different ways that individuals can reach us. Also, they can reach us through the current stations that are playing our YouTube.
broadcasting.
Yeah. So Dwayne, let's take another quick stop with our sponsors.
All righty.
You know, Dwayne, we have one of the best months and one of the worst months as far as I'm concerned.
Really, why is that?
Well, Christmas is in December,
Yes.
and everyone is excited about the fun-filled kinds of things. And then we have the month of April. And for most of us, we look forward to tax time.
Oh, taxes. Wish we could skip that month.
Well, as a matter of fact, tax changes occur on a constant basis. Every year, it seems that the taxes are different, and for most of us individuals, we like to have those kinds of tips in helping us to prepare our tax.
Return, and
Yeah,
or
yeah.
hopefully we get a return.
That's right. That's right. And so it's our pleasure to have Ohio Valley Bank's Common Sense, in which they interview a variety of different financial individuals that work at Ohio Valley Bank. And they have Tim Brumfield, who is one of those individuals that is knowledgeable about taking advantage of certain kinds of taxes.
Right.
And so it's our pleasure of having Ryan Mapes and Brad Baps, who are with the Ohio State University South Centers, discuss with Tim Brumfield with the Ohio Valley Bank about tax tips.
All righty.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Common Sense, our monthly show here at the University of Rio Grande that's sponsored by Ohio Valley Bank, where we discuss current issues in the banking community and, you know, how they kind of relate to different businesses in the region. Beautiful day outside today, Ryan. Nice sunny weather out there.
It
for,
is today.
For April, yeah.
For one day.
Maybe some rain tonight and
And
snow
snow
tomorrow.
Friday.
So great. So April's always a month of change, and it's probably, you know, a lot of people's favorite month of the year. Lots of fun things happen in April. Easter.
Easter.
And maybe
Everything's in bloom.
Yeah, everything's in bloom. Maybe something else comes up in April that a lot of people don't have a lot
Well, it does.
of favorites. They have it marked on the calendar.
Could be favorites or couldn't be favorites,
couldn't
depending
be
on which side of the fence you're on. So,
Right.
And we'll get to learn a little bit more about that today with our guest.
Right. So what we're referring to is the obvious tax day, the ominous tax day that's coming up here in the middle of this month. And today, with us, we have Tim Brumfield. Tim is the manager of Loan Central in Gallipolis here in the community. And Tim, welcome to our show today.
Well, thank you for having me today.
Good. We're hoping to learn some interesting things about tax season coming up and what we can do as far as filing and preparing our taxes. And we understand you have some experience doing that. And maybe we could start out the show today by you telling us a little bit about yourself, where you work, and the experience that you have in working in that area with helping individuals file their taxes.
Sure. I work for Loan Central, which is a consumer finance company that's a subsidiary of Ohio Valley Bank Corp. And I've been with them for about 19 years. This is my 19th tax season that we're almost about to wrap up here in the next couple of weeks. And prior to that, I graduated from Marshall University with a degree in mathematics.
Okay. And you're originally from the area.
Originally from Gay County, lived here all my life.
It's always nice when you can get off to school and come back and create a career nice close to home. So,
Sure, very familiar surroundings and a lot of friendly folks.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and again, it's just one of the things, the continuing thing of theme of what we've had with folks from the bank that have grown up in the community and are able to relate to the individuals here that you know you work with as customers. And it's important that we can identify with each other here in New York. So.
Yep. So, tax season. It's probably your busy time of the year, is that?
Very busy time of the year. Certainly late January, the first half of February is extremely busy. But even now, as we're winding down in the last couple of weeks of tax season, we're getting those folks that have put it off, and now we're kind of getting towards the wire to where they can't put it off any longer.
Sure. And that's one of the services that Loan Central provides. You might talk a little bit about that service and what it
Sure.
entails.
Basically, our tax preparation service is kind of, I think, twofold. One, if you're someone that's just needing your federal or state income taxes prepared, why we can handle that for individual filings. But in addition to that, we also offer a loan program, a tax refund loan program against a taxpayer's anticipated refund.
Okay. And in order to participate in the loan program, would they have to have the taxes done at your office?
Not
or-
necessarily. That's normally the way it works.
Sure.
The vast majority of times that's how it works, but they could actually go to another preparer and bring the paper return in, and then we
Okay.
can advance a loan if they have a refund.
Sure.
Okay. So I know we talked about it's getting close to that time of get the taxes filed. Traditionally, that's been April the 15th.
Correct.
Is that still a firm date for this year, or has that changed some?
That's not for this year. Most years, that's correct. April 15th would be the filing deadline. This year, it's actually Tuesday, April the 18th.
Okay.
Part of the reasoning behind that is April the 15th this year falls on a Saturday.
Right.
April the 16th is a holiday observed in the District of Columbia called Emancipation Day. And that holiday, where it falls on a Sunday, actually is observed on Monday the 17th,
Okay.
which pushes our filing deadline back to Tuesday the 18th this year.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So we've got a couple extra days for
Couple extra
all the
days.
procrastinators
Yeah.
out there.
That's right.
Put it off for a couple more days.
Right.
All right. Good deal.
So if, is there anyone that's exempt from filing taxes? I know most W-2 folks, well, all W-2 folks have to file taxes. Any reported income, maybe you can expand on that a little bit.
Sometimes for low-income filers, depending upon their filing status, they may not make enough to where they would be required by the Internal Revenue Service to file a tax return. But sometimes, depending upon if they have children that they could claim credits from, or maybe they have education credits where they're furthering their education in college,
Okay.
they may want to file a return even though they're not required. It could be to their benefit.
Is there a threshold dollar-wise? on
Yes,
what-
usually the threshold is based on their filing status.
Okay.
Usually for standard deduction for now, of course, certain aspects of filing, if you're talking about self-employment income, there I was kind of referring to W-2 income before, but is self-employment, if you have net earnings from self-employment of greater than $400, then you would need to file a tax return.
Yeah, okay.
What if I'm an individual who's, let's say, on a fixed income, such as Social Security, or maybe that's drawing a disability payment from the government, and that's my source of income? Do I still need to file?
Okay,
Tax return.
there are some instances where someone that is receiving Social Security may need to file a tax return, depending upon what their other income
If they have other incomes.
is. If you're talking about disability payments like SSI or workers' comp, veterans benefits, VA benefits, those things are not taxable. If that's all that they had, they wouldn't have to file in those instances. But just to broadly say, if they receive Social Security, they don't have to file. That would
Right,
not,
that
that
doesn't
would
automatically
Okay.
exactly
preclude you from doing that.
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
And those payments probably have it already kind of figured into the amount that you're receiving is already, tax considerations are taking into what they pay.
Sometimes a portion of
Yeah.
Social Security benefits can be taxable.
Okay.
Okay. And can folks, even though they're not required to, can they still file taxes on those? And what I'm thinking of is if they went to, if they needed to get a mortgage from the bank or what, in most cases they're going to require.
Certainly to have a record on file, a
Sure.
transcript of the IRS, sure. Also you think about even for low-income filers, if they've had federal tax withheld from their paycheck throughout the year, that would be included on their W-2, and you'd at least want to file to get that money back if you were eligible to do that.
Right,
So,
especially, students who might have a part-time job that don't really meet the filing threshold, but have had money withheld. Obviously, they would want to file a return so they can get their refund.
and a lot of times they can do that without even claiming themselves in their tax return. They may maybe they're away at college, they live at the dorm, but maybe in the summer when they're not going to school, they live back at home with their parents. And their parents may claim them as a dependent on their tax return, but they could still file without claiming themselves, and oftentimes get back what they paid in.
Right. And so that's a good example of why it's important to have someone like yourself that understands the tax filing process. You know, obviously we can go out and purchase TurboTax or whatever and do it ourselves, but just that knowledge of how to, you know, be smart about taking your tax return and how you can file it and save
Oh, yeah.
your family
absolutely.
and
Well,
yourself some money. I mean, how would anybody even know that?
Sometimes you
So-
you can be within the confines of the law in filing, but you're not filing the best way. You're not
Right.
filing the way to maximize the refund amount that you'd be entitled to.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times those programs are good about being able to follow the law. You're in compliance with the law, but you're not necessarily filing it in the best possible method to get the highest refund you can get.
Well, it's like we talked at lunch, you know, for a 2-page form that you have to fill out, there's might be 200 pages of instructions for that.
Oftentimes there's some very confusing rules that have to be sifted through, and if you're not someone that's dealt with it all the time, you may not want to take the time to have to educate yourself about it, and that's where maybe some of our value comes in. You know, that's what we're trying to do. We want to provide value for our customers, for our clients when they come in, and we think we do.
Yeah, sure. And that leads into another question I have is if knowing all the tax laws, and I believe you mentioned you have to go every year and get not certified, but go through a refresher course maybe on changes, because it changes annually or daily.
And sometimes within days before the.
Sure.
Sometimes within the season too.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
We can take continuing education courses to continue further our knowledge about different aspects of the tax law, or different things that would come up, new things that come up. I mean, you know, recently in the last few years, of course, we've had the Affordable Care Act, the Health Care Act, or Obamacare, as maybe it's commonly known, and you know, of course, that when I first started doing taxes 19 years ago, that wasn't on the radar.
Right.
So this is something totally new, and of course, you know, all preparers had to become familiar with the ins and outs of that act.
Sure. So if I'm I've got a W-2 family, what would be some of the things I should look for if I want to consider having someone do my taxes, fill my taxes out for me? What are some things that I should?
Well, I would think the first thing you'd want to know a little bit about that preparer, what their expertise has been, what their experience level has been. You know, are they trying to draw me into something that doesn't sound right to me? I may not be a tax expert, but are they trying to get me to do something that just doesn't sound like that would be allowable by IRS regulations?
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, then you may want to ask around to friends or acquaintances that you'd have.
That's a good point.
About that preparer to see if they know them or know anything about them.
Sure.
So, you know, whenever it's time to sit down and bite the bullet and get your taxes prepared, what are some of the things that you as an individual really need to gather up and bring with you whenever you go to get those taxes done?
Records, and more records.
Records are, okay. First thing's your W-2, right?
Right. W-2s and 1099s, which 1099s a lot of times are supplemental type income,
Right.
things like unemployment compensation, maybe a 1099 miscellaneous, which could include non-employee compensation. If someone is a self-employed contractor and they received a payment from someone, they may get a 1099 miscellaneous. Also now 1095s, which again are related to the Affordable Health Care Act, which will tell if that taxpayer how many months out of the year they had the minimum essential health care coverage. Also, if they had participated in obtaining insurance coverage through the marketplace, and if any of their insurance premiums were subsidized. So all those forms, but in addition, IDs and Social Security cards, certainly we want to validate the person that we're speaking with to make sure that they are who they say they are.
Right. So you turn in a wrong Social Security number for a child to the IRS, then you're going to start throwing up questions.
Well, typically what happens there, we do electronic filing, and we're required to have a copy of that Social Security card to avoid those errors.
Okay.
But when you submit that to the IRS, if you have an incorrect Social Security number or the name doesn't match that number, the return will reject. It will not be a filed return, and then you'll have to go back and correct that error before the return could be deemed to be filed.
Okay.
So, well, I think I can probably speak for everyone. The less taxes we pay, the happier we are.
Absolutely.
Or the more we can get back at the end of the year, the happier we are. So, what are some things that people commonly overlook that could be used as deductions to minimize the tax burden?
Probably, I would probably say a couple of things that sometimes taxpayers may tend to overlook. The first would be a credit called the Retirement Savers Credit. This credit is one of the few credits, maybe the only credit that I know of, that you can kind of get a double benefit from if you understand what you're doing. You can work at your employer, and you can choose to defer a portion of your income into a retirement account, which off the top, the benefit of that is you're going to lower your taxable income and pay less tax.
Tax.
It's pre-tax, right. But in addition to that, if you fall within the right income limit for your filing status and you have tax liability, you can get the second benefit of that. You can get a retirement savers credit on your tax return. The IRS is trying to reward you for saving for your future. So kind of a double benefit there. Most everyone today has some type of 401k plan where they work. And as long as you're within those income guidelines, and it's roughly for a married couple, roughly if you stay under $60,000 taxable, then you can take advantage of that credit. That would be one. Another would be education credits. If anyone in the household would be furthering their education at a college or university, if they're an undergraduate, there's a very nice credit for the first 4 years called American Opportunity Credit, which is a credit that can benefit a taxpayer up to $2,500.
Okay.
But then there's also one called the Lifetime Learning Credit, which for those that maybe have went back to school, they're in graduate school, and whatever their eligible expense is, they can get a 20% credit on that eligible expense up to $2,000 on the return if they have that much expense.
Okay.
So those are probably two of the more commonly maybe overlooked credits and deductions. Yeah.
Okay. And one thing you mentioned a minute ago about, if you're filing or married and filing a joint return, so there are options there as whether you're filing jointly or filing separately.
That's correct.
And that's another one of those things, where we were talking about maybe the software programs. What's the best for your scenario? So you've probably seen scenarios where people are more advantageous to file separately than jointly.
Absolutely.
According to their situation, even if they're married.
And believe it or not, there are situations where a lot of situations that we encounter where maybe filing separately versus filing jointly on the federal return is about the same. However, for your state return, it may be much better in those instances to have filed separately, and you wind up being able to take advantage of getting a bigger refund from the state of Ohio, for example. And because if you file separately on the federal, you have to follow suit and file separately on the state, or if you file jointly, then the same thing applies. So sometimes you have to even go that far to look at the state return, the differences in the state return, to see if it would behoove that customer to file separately or to file jointly.
And sometimes those differences could amount to a few $100s.
Absolutely.
Or more.
Absolutely.
So it's just that, it's that simple.
Just depends on the situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, and sitting down with the tax preparer, you can actually go through both scenarios and help the individual determine which is the best.
Yeah, we do that quite
scenario
often.
for them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, there's some terms sometimes when we start talking about taxes and we hear these terms, and it might help our viewers if we could, or if you could, not me, if you could explain what, maybe the term dependent,
Okay.
and then we hear itemized versus standard deductions,
Okay.
or any other common terms that you think
Okay.
could be.
Typically, when you think about a dependent on a tax return, there's usually a couple of ways that a taxpayer might be able to claim someone as a dependent on their return. The IRS calls that a qualifying child or a qualifying relative. In the case of a qualifying child, there's 5 tests that individual would have to meet for the taxpayer to be able to claim them as a qualifying child and thereby dependent on their return. Things like their residency status. Did they live with the taxpayer for at least half the year? What's their relationship to the taxpayer? What's their age? Are they going? Is the dependent themselves going to be filing a tax return with someone they're married to, which is a case that happens. And then also the 5th and final test is, did that person provide more than half of their own support? Then if they do not qualify as a qualifying child, they may, a less stringent test would be to qualify as a qualifying relative, where even the relationship standard is relaxed a little bit in that instance, and you may be able to claim them as a dependent on the tax return and get a deduction. Now this year, the deduction for that's $4,050 per dependent.
Okay.
Okay.
So is there an age limit on dependents?
For a qualifying child, the test that they have to pass is they have to be under 19,
Okay.
or they can be under 24 and a student,
Okay.
or they can be any age if they're permanently and totally disabled.
Okay.
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 And then itemizing versus standard deduction.
Itemizing versus standard
Now, that one
deduction.
confuses
Yes.
me, so.
Okay. Well, we'll try to
Okay.
muddy that water
All right,
maybe a
good.
little bit more for you. Obviously, what you're going to look at there for the filing status you are, if you're single or if you're married filing a joint return, the IRS each year sets an amount of a standard deduction, a standard amount that you can subtract from your income to help your tax picture. You compare what your standard deduction would be with what your itemized deductions could be. And when they say itemized, they mean things like mortgage interest. Did you pay mortgage interest? Did you pay real estate taxes? Did you have excessive medical expenses that you had to pay out of pocket during the year? How much money did you give to charity? Did you have to pay employee expense? In other words, you work for someone, you receive a W-2, maybe you had to travel out of town, you paid the hotel bill, maybe you paid your food while you were away, you paid the travel costs. You add all those items up on the tax return, and if those items total a larger deduction than the standard deduction, then obviously you'd want to itemize.
Okay.
And in doing so, you lower your taxable income.
Okay. And I think a key point is being able to document all those expenses.
Absolutely, especially in the case of the traveling worker.
Yeah.
You would want to make sure you'd have to be able to document, where you've been and the expenses that you paid, certainly for your hotel and your mileage to take advantage of that.
Charitable deductions.
Charitable
they can give
deductions,
you
usually you should, I would suggest getting a receipt
Yeah.
anytime you're giving to a charitable organization.
Yeah.
And then, if you have a mortgage, the bank will send you a mortgage interest statement, so you'd have that.
Or make payments by means of check or
Correct.
something rather than cash. That way you
You'd
do
have a record.
a paper record of that.
Correct.
Yep.
So,
Okay. Well, good.
you mentioned the Affordable Care Act. There are some reporting forms that needs to be supplied along with your tax return.
Correct.
According to that.
With the Affordable Care Act, one of the things that a tax preparer is looking for is we're trying to determine during, of course, we're doing 2016 taxes at present time here in 2017.
Right.
We're looking to determine everyone in that tax household, did they have minimum essential coverage throughout the year 2016?
Okay.
Usually the forms that are being sent out, the 1095s, which are kind of new forms that we've been getting in the last couple of years, will indicate, there will be boxes marked of the months. It'll either mark all 12 months that they were covered, or there'll be, by the month, it'll mark the box that they had coverage.
Right.
So that's one form that we see a lot of to determine if all the folks on the return had minimum essential coverage for the entire year. You also have another 1095 form if they obtained insurance through the marketplace. If their insurance payments are being subsidized, the tax return is a place where reconciliation takes place. They compare your income with what payments have been made for you on your insurance, and then it's either you got too much help or you didn't get enough help,
Right.
and that adjustment gets made on the tax return.
Okay. It's hard to believe, I know we're running short on time, but there are a couple more questions. This is something I think we could sit and talk about for hours,
Oh, yes.
probably. But the government, as far as identity theft and taxes, what steps are being taken along those lines? There might be some extra questions on your
Sure.
end to the clients.
Sure. We're seeing a lot of that. We get a lot of calls about refunds being delayed. 2015 in December, Congress passed the PATH Act, which delayed several types of refunds this year till mid-February. Those that had the earned income credit, the additional child tax credit, and the American Opportunity Credit. And the main reason for that, IRS is just looking to match W-2s. They get a matching record from the employer, and as the taxpayers filing their return, they're just waiting to match that information so that they don't send out refunds in error. The state of Ohio has also got a program to take care of this. Many of our viewers may have received a quiz paper in the mail. They have to go online and verify some personal information before their Ohio refund is released. So those are some steps that are being taken.
Okay. Well, I know it looks like we've only got about 30 seconds left. Are there any other quick tips in 30 seconds that you'd like to share?
Just make sure you get those taxes
Make sure
filed
you
by
file.
April the 18th
Okay.
this year.
That's probably the most important
and,
tip.
and if you're one of the unfortunate ones and you owe, get that payment along with it by that deadline.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks very much. That's
Thank
great
you for having me today.
information. Yeah.
Well, Tim, thank you again for coming. And obviously, there's several more questions we can ask, and maybe we'll get the opportunity to do that again. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
well, thank you all for turning in, and until next time, this is Brad Bapst
I'm Ryan Mapes.
for Common Sense. We'll see you in May.
And that was a video with Ryan Mapes and Brad Bapst talking with Tim Brumfield about a variety of financial information and tax information. So another great video that they put on. They've got a lot of great stuff. So,
Yeah, they do.
yeah.
They very much do.
Yeah. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
You know, Dwayne, we have been very fortunate to develop a library of different videos in which we feature various different guests.
Right.
Some of those include AgriTalk, our dog show, Positive Learning.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's a good one. I like
Yes,
that one.
yeah. And then we have the Voice of Rio Grande with the provost, with the president, Dr. Michelle Johnson, the provost, Dr. Richard Sachs, community education, in which he also brings in a number of different individuals, Dr. Klein. And then we have the deans, and the various different deans bring in a variety of different things. And then at Ohio State University,
Yeah, here at our location, we've got a variety of shows as well starting up. One of them will be an agri-news.
Yep.
We have another one that we call AZEL, run, and,
Yes.
which features students on campus mainly, and maybe up-and-coming students. And then we've got another new one called Soil Health Talk.
Yes. And
Another
then,
great one.
and then we have South Center's Chat.
South Center's Chat.
That's with Dr. Tom Worley. He's the director of the South Centers. And he always has some unique, interesting guests, whether they are with the university or outside.
Yes.
So we have a variety of different programs. I would say that in our library we have over 400 different ones. And to demonstrate this, 2 years ago, Dr. Michelle Johnston joined the University of Rio Grande Community College, and she was relatively new and wanted to come on one of our programs called Business Talk, which Jason Winters and myself interviewed various different educational leaders and business owners, etc. And she talked about her vision. Now, it's rather interesting. Dr. Johnston has been a moving force within the university, and she is, I want to say, well known throughout Ohio and parts of that surround. As a matter of fact, she even interviewed Dr. Michael Drake.
Michael Drake,
Who is
president of the Ohio State
Yeah,
University.
yeah, and it's our great pleasure to replay that interview that we have with Patrick Dangle, Jason Winters, and Mike Thompson in Business Talk.
Welcome to Business Talk, presented in collaboration with the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, from the heart of southeastern Ohio at the University of Rio Grande TV studio. Our goals are simple: promote the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, as well as advocate local small business and their support organizations. More importantly, promote southeastern Ohio as a wonderful place to live, explore, and learn. There are many different ways you can find us. The University of Rio Grande Cable Access Channel 17, live online at blogtalkradio.com, and on YouTube if you are unable to catch our show live. Introducing our co-hosts, Jason Winters, Mike Thompson, Patrick Dingle. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Business.
Jason, you brought a really good guest today.
Well, actually, Patrick, I did not bring a guest today. We were just walking across the college green, and I saw someone there, and I just kind of grabbed her and snagged her and pulled her along.
I think that's really great. And I can't wait to find out more about our special guest. I just wanted to say that since the beginning of January, we started something that I'm very pleased is going well. And that is not only a 1 o'clock, but a 2 o'clock show. And we have different individuals that come to University of Rio Grande campus, and they talk. For instance, every second Wednesday, we have somebody from the arts. And every third Wednesday, we talk about agriculture. And then this week, it's manufacturing.
Did you figure out what sprouting and potatoes meant last week?
All I know is I got a lot of eyes.
You got a lot of eyes.
Yes.
Well, that's your start.
Yes. But this week we're going to be featuring the manufacturing. So I'm just pleased how we're growing. So tell us about our special guest.
I would love to introduce our special guest. Today we have Dr. Michelle Johnson. Michelle is our new president here at the University of Rio Grande. Michelle has been with us now for under 6 months, roughly 4. And I'm going to let her tell us a little bit about herself. So Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us about yourself.
Wow. Well, I want to start by thanking you guys for inviting me here. And I've watched your show, and I know that you've had quite a list of distinguished guests. So I hope that I can, the bar has been set pretty high.
Why we hired her as president.
That's right. That's right. If we told her that we had to get rid of the Pope and the President for her to come on, do you think she would believe us? Well,
You're very convincing, Pat.
oh, well, thank you.
No, I thank you guys, and you are extremely good at what you do. And Mike Thompson with his work and the crew,
He
I just
is.
thank,
He makes
thank
us
you guys.
look pretty.
And that's a tough job.
Yes.
He promised to use all the right, filters and things to help me out here. But no, I'm really glad to be here, and most importantly, very happy to be at Rio Grande.
Good.
It has been a whirlwind of learning and introductions, planning, decision making. I think it's been everything over the last 4 months, and there just has not been a dull moment to speak of. And so I just couldn't be happier to be here. People have asked me, well, why did you come to southeastern Ohio? How did you end up at Rio Grande? And so, Jason, you asked me to tell a little bit about myself. I won't give all the gory details by any means. They're pretty boring, in fact. But I did grow up in a small town in Mississippi, an extremely small town. Anybody want to look it up? It's Longview, Mississippi.
Oh, been there.
Oh, yeah. At one point, I think in the 20s, it was the cross-tie capital of the world. Kind of a name, the claim to fame there. But very small community.
Population?
A couple of hundred. Tiny little community. But we were just in the shadows of a university town. So whereas I lived in a more rural area, we had access to the city. And the city was the huge metropolis of Starkville, Mississippi, which was a great place to grow up. Mississippi State University is there. And my family was involved in agriculture. My father is an agronomist. My mother owns a small business in Starkville. She still does. And our family was very involved in 4-H. And Jason, I see your pen there, and I know we have some connections with your.
4-H.
That's right. You're trying to win some brownie points with your wife.
Always.
I understand.
Always.
And I'll try to get there with my husband before this show is over. But growing up in 4-H, we showed lambs in 4-H, and we're very involved in our clubs there and activities, and it was a great place to grow up. But one of the things I saw immediately when I started learning more about Rio Grande and the people here, because it's like a church in the sense that it's not about the buildings, it's about the people. We are Rio Grande, right?
Yes, that is true.
And so as I started learning more, I felt so at home, because the values that I grew up with in terms of, the neighbors, you're going to go the extra mile for your neighbor. You're committed and you're loyal and you want good things to happen and you're invested in your communities. Those are the things that were near and dear to my heart, my family's hearts. And that is one of the things I found here. I also have my closest girlfriend is from Ohio. And so she had wonderful things to say about Ohio. And although she grew up in the Cleveland area, her family is from Meigs County. Her grandfather had a farm in Meigs
right
County.
around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And so she had been in this area and knew about the farm festival and all these other things and knew the area. And so she encouraged me and said, hey, it's a great place. And so it really is.
Did she warn you about the winters here?
She kind of left that detail out. A lot of people did.
Did you have snow down in Mississippi?
Not much. Once in a blue moon we would. But not a lot. So, my skin is acclimating to the weather. And, but, people say, oh, you moved, north, you've never lived that far north. And I said, but it doesn't even feel like it. Because as long as people say y'all, and I can order sweet tea,
Right.
then, the rest is made, right?
You're good.
That is true.
Although it's hard to find grits up here.
It's hard to find grits. It is. But, I'm not a huge grit girl, so I'm okay.
Didn't you meet your boyfriend, your sweetheart, the one that you started a family with?
Right.
In the town?
I met him he came in when he was in late elementary school, and I met him. I knew him, most of my childhood, and he's my high school sweetheart. And we have a 22nd wedding anniversary coming up this summer. We've been together for 27 years, so we kind of know each other. And he's a great guy. Brownie points, right? No, he's wonderful, wonderful husband and father, and he is a professor at the University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Wow.
So he's a business faculty member, Jason, in information systems. And we have two daughters. They're high school age. They are also wonderful. And they get along most of the time. You know, they either love each other or hate each other.
That's the way siblings are supposed to be.
Exactly. And so I have a senior and a freshman. So I'm really proud of my family. They're wonderful and have been so extremely supportive about being here and really wrapping their arms around Rio Grande. Even though they have not made the move yet, we're letting that senior finish up.
I understand.
Finish up. You know,
I
she
think
was
that's
right
important.
there. She
I
could
think
see the
that's
end
important.
in sight. So, yeah, but I think a lot of this area and the potential for this institution, and that's why I'm here.
Well, the neat thing about this area, we are within 50 miles, and even though University of Rio Grande Community College has a really good faculty and a really good student base,
Yeah.
students have a choice
Sure.
amongst many different school systems, and I'm glad that the daughters are coming up here to decide if they want to go to Rio Grande, decide to make Ohio their home.
Right. I mean, it's you know, it's always a big decision-making time for people when they're thinking about, you know, whether you're a 17, 18-year-old coming out of high school or if you're a student that's more of a post-traditional age and looking for that opportunity to come back or to start. And, you know, anybody that's making a decision about where to go to college, it's huge. And we can never underestimate the importance of that decision and what goes into that. And I think what we've seen is a real transformation in higher education. I know I'm preaching to the choir and many of the viewers too, that what we've seen is a real change in how schools compete for students.
Sure.
You know, it's become, there's a big marketing push, and Jason, you probably can add a lot to this in terms of what we've seen, the environment for marketing in higher education. You didn't have cabinet level positions and high level marketing positions. You had more PR offices on campuses,
Right.
you know, even 10, 15 years ago. And we've seen that transform now to strategic marketing so that we can get our message out.
Well, and from a business standpoint, we don't have as many customers. We're
Right.
not producing as many children
No,
today.
that's right. That's right. And you know, I was looking at some of those numbers. You know, I look at them pretty regularly, and anytime updates come out. But you know, in this area, we're looking at an expected 12% decline in high school graduates. You know, in the next few years, and we've already experienced that.
And that's a physical number of people,
Right.
not just because they can't go to college.
Right. No, it's just that it's
We're
they're
not
not
producing
there.
that many kids.
Right. Exactly.
So some of my associates that have families, I
Right.
should encourage them to have more children.
Please.
Okay.
Yes. Is that the message that we're sending?
Yes, I
You
think
know,
so.
Yeah. But I think that, you know, that decision making when students have and families have so many options.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think is a real, I think, marketing tool for us and something that we need to get the word out about is that we have what a lot of larger institutions and places that aren't like us want to have, okay? And that is the small size, the community feel. And so you see a lot of larger institutions that we're familiar with that try to create those communities and those learning groups and create an environment where students connect to each other and connect with faculty, even if the environment is much larger in terms of the number of students. Well, the good news is we can put our energy into some other things because we already have that by default. I mean, we have a beautiful campus. We have over 200 acres here of a picturesque campus, and we have faculty that are dedicated, honestly, what I've seen, 24/7 to the well-being of our students, the progress of our students, and that is the focus. And I think that with the fact that we already have that size and those opportunities for connections that we don't have to create and spend the time and the energy to do that, we can focus on what are we doing for learning, how are we supporting our faculty and delivering the highest quality education, and what do we provide in terms of campus life for our students. I mean, that's so important, the entire experience.
I tend to agree with you. The interesting thing also is University of Rio Grande has kept up with the internet
Sure.
crowd.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know in one of the classes that I'm involved with, half the students are purely internet and half the students are let's sit in the classroom.
And I think that's so important because we need to be accessible. We can't be, and I know one of your guests, or your guest last week, our provost, Dr. Richard Sachs, he talked about the fact that, you know, we can do anything, but we can't do everything.
Exactly.
And you know, he hit the nail on the head. But one thing that we have to do in that we can do anything category is that, you know, we have to think about access and our students and how they need to get information and
Right.
what their schedules allow and where they are and all those things. And if we don't, then, you know, we're just kind of sitting here saying this is who we are and you just need to make that work for you.
Well, from a
And-
business standpoint, that's pure customer service.
Right, exactly. And we constantly think about that here. And I think the beauty, and another thing that we have as a real asset, is that the size that we are and the type of institution we have with delivering associate's degrees at the community college level and having bachelor's degrees and master's programs, is that we can be extremely agile and responsive. And I think some of your guests have talked about this before, that you can come here as a student, you can come here as a faculty member or staff member, and you can really impact and you can be a real change agent
That is
in
true.
saying, wow, we don't have this kind of student organization, but I really want to start it. Well, good luck doing that at some of the larger
Right.
environments where, I mean, there are a lot of processes that you have to go through for that, and we can kind of do those things on a, you know, on a dime. And I think that
The
that's
thing that really surprised me was so many different fraternities
Sure.
and sororities
Yeah.
that University of Rio Grande represents.
That's
or
true.
has.
And I think people don't realize that, and they're looking for a college experience, and we need to be able to portray that. And I think we've got an army of people on this campus that know it, and we have legions of alumni that can talk about that. We just need to get that word out. And you guys look so nice today, and I could have borrowed a tie from you, Pat, but I wanted to wear a little bit more casual today because I wanted to wear this you know, everything Rio. One of the things that's been a lot of fun is as I travel, and I've been doing a good bit of that, just trying to meet as many people as possible. And whenever I travel and I'm in an airport or I'm any kind of transit situation, I always have Rio very visible. I'm wearing, you know, I'm kind of head to toe kind of thing. I know it may be an embarrassment, but there's a purpose. I want people to ask about it. And I've yet to have a trip in these last little over 4 months where I have not had a question from, you know, an individual that just random walks up, the person that's sitting beside me in the airplane, oh, my best friend is a graduate, is one of your alums, and somebody came, you know, and it's just everywhere you go, they walk
right.
up and start talking about it, and that's what I want to see. And it's very encouraging. So, you know, we talked about this. Jason, you may not want to admit this, but you were actually on the search committee that was in the process.
I was.
Yeah, carried out
So
that
you're-
process.
so he's
It's his-
responsible for
It's his
bringing
fault.
you.
It is
Good,
his fault.
good.
So we can blame Jason. But in that process, we were talking about just what do we know about Rio Grande? Who knows about Rio Grande? And it starts at home.
That
It
is
starts
true.
with us and our community, and we have to be the champions. So, you know, I experienced this when I was in Alabama. That, you know, it's like here. You will see, you know, there are big time football here in Alabama. There's SEC football and sports and all those things. Somebody told me that SEC is schools eating crow now after the national championship.
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
know
pretty much
that's
so, yeah.
that's what I hear.
Yeah, who did win the championship again?
I can't remember. It.
Now you guys.
It
come
was
on. Give me
yes.
a break. Really.
You
Really.
something like that. But you know, it really is interesting to me to think about, you know, that students will come onto their campuses and even our faculty and staff, and they have another school that they're kind of, you know, they have a connection to, and that's what you see. And I understand that. I get that. You know, I took this tour around the Southeastern Conference in my education, and so, you know, I really kind of like this patchwork quilt of schools that I've been associated with. But what I want to see is that the same thing that Coke expects. If you work for Coca-Cola and you have a Pepsi on your desk, yeah, your days are probably numbered there. You know, it's pretty much taboo. And I want to see that here. And I'm not going to go around and, you know, be too difficult and hardcore. But what I want to see is people are proud of this brand.
Right. I think that many programs that you do have, one that it really promotes the university is your soccer teams.
Absolutely.
And the other sports teams, the baseball.
Oh, yeah.
And they have done very, very well as far as getting
Absolutely.
the word out.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many, when you look at our programs and some of our recent accomplishments on the athletic side, and these are our student athletes. These are students first. Now, they do some great things in their athletic accomplishments, but we had championships on our cross country, our conference champions in cross country this year. We also had our soccer team was conference champion and qualified for and went to the national tournament. And we've had a lot of great things happen there. Same thing with our women's soccer team. Our men went to the nationals. Our women went to regionals, and they won the conference championship as well. So there's just a lot to really be
Yes.
proud of and to rally
Yes.
around.
Yes.
Basketball's in full force. Baseball's starting. We had a good volleyball season this last
It's my
year.
understanding that, was it the soccer or one of the teams scrimmaged with Ohio State?
Oh yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
they held their own.
Absolutely held their own,
Yeah.
and we're really proud of them. But I think that things like that, when you look at athletics, but you also look at our strong fine arts programs. I mean, I think about the things that have been going on in the 4 months that I've been here. I mean, like I said, there's never a dull moment, and most evenings I'm choosing between 2 or 3 things to go to. Whether it's a student event, or it's an athletic event, or it's a fine arts event, or it's a recruitment event where you have, a ton of students here for a marketing day and to have some friendly competition. I mean, there are so many things to choose from. And I've seen some of the amazing exhibits in our gallery here, and people coming in from our surrounding communities. Our music presentations, it's been all over the map, from rock to Messiah to Disney, and I mean, it's just all very, very top notch. So really, really proud to see those things. There's a lot that we have to offer.
Oh, I bet there is. What do you think about the city of Gallipolis and Jackson and all the, you've had an
Yeah.
opportunity to go to many of our smaller
Right.
than Columbus towns.
Sure. I mean, great communities.
Yes.
Very great communities.
Yes.
And people who have lived here and invested in these communities want to see really good things happen for Rio Grande, and because they understand the importance of partnerships. And and that's one of the things that I've really been so encouraged by as I've been in our communities, in our 4-county region and even beyond, is that people want to get on board and say, how can we partner? What can we do?
Sure.
How can this be
Right.
a win-win situation? And that's really encouraging.
Yes. We have found that although much of our area is farmland
Sure.
and much of our area is smaller towns, things of that nature, people are people.
Right.
And
They are.
they enjoy the same kinds of things that and they want the best for their children and their families.
They do.
So-
They do.
so,
Exactly.
uh,
Well, and I think that one of the things that also has been really fun to learn about, it was even this morning I was on the telephone with a gentleman out of Columbus that works for Limited Brands, and he said, we've looked at institutions of higher learning within a 100-mile radius of us, and we've identified 2, Rio being one of those, that we want to really up the partnership with.
Good.
Okay, we want to
Good.
really create a pipeline for students for employment. They're doing some expansions in their company and building some new campuses and things like that for Limited Brands, and they're going to need more high-level and skilled employees, graduates with business degrees, students that are in our engineering technologies and plant maintenance and those kinds of things. A lot of different areas, and they want to establish a pipeline with us. There are other options they have. So why are they looking at us? Well, a lot of it is because of the type of student we produce. That is turning heads. And what I've seen from other companies as well, we took a 2.5-hour trip a couple of months ago to a company that it's a plant that supplies to Nissan. And so they're a supplier, a very large plant there, and they had hired one of our graduates, couldn't believe what he brought to the table in terms of who he was, but also what kind of education he had. And they have options for programs and schools that are in their backyards, but they said, no, we want what you produce.
Fantastic.
And I love that.
Well, Michelle, let's go one step farther with
Okay.
that, because we're talking about those programs that we offer here on campus.
Sure.
Traditionally, what we're talking about is those 2-year community college degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the President Obama's new initiative.
Yes.
How does that apply?
You know, the President's Promise Plan, as it's being called right now, is something, you know, ears really perk up among all of us in higher education to say, what kind of revolutionary step could this be? When first through 12th grade, and then it went down to K through 12, became publicly available
So now
to
are
all
we going
citizens.
K through 14?
Right, and maybe it looks like the direction that, you know, there are a lot of things to happen from here in order to move this along, and I think there are a lot of question marks about what it means. The thing I've been really impressed with is that, you know, one of the things that is just fundamental and core to community colleges is access and availability. And this just really, it takes access and puts it on steroids. You know, it's one of those things that opens the doors for us to serve students that are meeting too many hurdles in terms of their finances and everything else to have to get into the door. And so, I mean, it's just, it could be just a game changer in terms of for our communities, for our campus, you know, all of those things. So I'm really excited about it. One other thing I would say is that I'm impressed with how it's been structured so far. And like I said, there are still a lot of details to learn about. But it's not a one-shot deal. It requires a partnership. The students would have to maintain a certain GPA and demonstrate persistence and meet progress requirements. Our states would have to commit in new ways and say, okay, we need to continue to commit and really step it up a notch in committing to higher education. And same thing with our institutions. We will have to, you know, be on our toes and make sure that we're continuing to think about quality of programs, employability, and all of those things.
I think for the listening audience, they should be aware that University of Rio Grande is really a unique facility in which it houses two different kinds of institutions.
Oh, yeah. Very unique. I mean, the only one like this.
One is a community college,
Right.
and then one is a private university.
Exactly. That's,
and each sort of feed each other.
we do. I mean, we think of ourselves as one, but what we offer are a lot of unique components because of how we're put together. And I think that they're all positives, and we need to maximize the use of those. Make sure, again, a lot of it is getting this message out because we have a great thing here, but we're kind of we've kept it under a bushel too long. And I think that, you know, the future is extremely bright. And one of the things I'm excited about, and I know you guys had several jokes that we wanted to get in here. We haven't been able to do that yet, but I know we need to leave some time. But, I mean, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and probably is one of those things that you've lived for, is that you want on these programs to have something that no one else knows yet, right? That you just kind of have that.
That's right.
This is where you get it.
Yes.
I mean, if you want
Yes. That's
to
right.
be on the front end of these
Yes.
things, this is where you come. Well,
So
I'm going to.
Michelle, tell us the scoop. We want the scoop.
Yes.
Okay.
And you've
well,
heard it
you've heard it
first.
here, right? You've heard it right here.
Live.
We, you know, as a new president, there were a lot of gifts that I found already here when I came. A strategic plan that the entire campus, alumni, a lot of stakeholders were involved in, and those things were already in place about where do we want to go, what's the vision, and we've revised that and continued to grow it because it needs to be flexible and benefit from the new things that we know. Same thing with our campus master plan. So all these things already existed. So now we have an opportunity through some state appropriations that these appropriations are for the sole purpose of capital projects. You know, we have a lot of needs on this campus, and we have some financial challenges. And there are a lot of needs in terms of compensation and positions and professional development and other program enhancements. And those things are very real, and we're working on those. But these dollars that we have are only for capital projects. They can only be used for that. And so we've extracted priorities from those existing plans that we all had a hand in, except for me. I didn't. You all had a hand in. And we're ready to move on those.
Good.
So we're real
Very
excited
good.
about $2.6 million in capital projects that we'll be rolling
Fantastic.
out very soon.
And those projects are?
Do we have time to go through all
We
of those?
do. We
Maybe
want the
that's the
scoop.
cliffhanger, so you guys
well-
will invite me back.
Well, when you do come back, I do want to say that this is a working school.
Yes.
And by that, whenever opportunities permit, students get a chance to do the various different things. Like, for instance, behind the scenes, Mike is watching Grant and Luke do all the technical details. Mike, as director of the instructional media and design programs, etc., loves it when students
Absolutely.
can take over. And then that way, if we make a mistake, which never
No.
occurs. Mistake, yes. And that's a nice thing about the university, is the fact that students need to be involved, not just in the educational process, but
Oh, outside of that,
That's
for
right.
their entire development.
Yes.
So, yeah, hats
Yes.
off to what you're doing with this program and involving students in it.
and well, hats off to you for allowing the different programs, as you see, and get a chance to go across campus.
Sure.
It's my understanding you have a pedometer that tells you that
Yeah, it's saying to me right now, you've not walked near enough today.
It's getting close.
Yeah, that's right.
With the campus being how many square feet, or how many yards?
Well, we have over 200 acres.
Acres.
Yeah, so I ought to be able to get some steps in if I'll
Yes.
just get out there and do
Yes.
it, right?
Yes.
Well,
Well,
if I hadn't snagged her off the college green today, she'd have had to step in.
Right,
Yes.
right. The
well,
price.
I want to thank you very much
Thank you.
for being a guest. You have to come back and tell us about the capital
Yes.
programs.
Thank you. I just tried to tease you a little bit with it so
That's
that,
mean.
that we
That's
could.
cruel.
I know. We ran out of time. You guys are cutting me
Yeah,
off.
I know. Hey, stay tuned for, at 2 o'clock. We're going to be bringing in some Ohio State University small business development counselors, manufacturing people, and I thank you for listening. I'm Patrick.
I'm Jason.
I'm Michelle.
Hang on just a minute, okay? Yeah, I'll call you back. All right, bye.
Well, that's pretty much our radio show for the day. Dwayne, I really enjoyed the different videos that we had.
I did too. I think they were very informative and straight to the point and some good information for everyone.
Yes, and we saw Tech Talk, which they talked about safety. We had
Some financial information. Tax.
Yes, tax information. We had Dr. Michelle Johnston, and we had choosing recovery, a very important topic. So to the listening audience and to the viewing audience, I want to thank you very much for your kind attention, and look for us eventually once a week, in which we will be sharing other kinds of information for you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.